All right. Good morning. Sorry about that. We're having some internet connections, but we're going to address that. Um, Tracy, before I introduce you, I did want to give people a moment to get connected. While we wait for people to get connected, I did something really special. If you can see, even though we're both attorneys, I still dress up in a suit and tie. I know a lot of people after the pandemic has kind of shed the suit and tie and done something for a little more casual or business casual. But if you see my tie right there,
Yes.
um, I did that specially for you
Thank you.
because I know you would love it. For all those out there, I did my undergrad at University of Michigan. And Tracy, where did you do law school or undergrad at Michigan State or both?
I did my law school at Michigan State College of Law. Yeah.
Okay.
So I noticed last time we talked, you had a nice hoodie with or the nice, shirt with the big M on it, the maize and blue. It is a beautiful color. I'm not gonna lie.
I um I joke around sometimes. I'm not that competitive like some of the football y-
Yeah.
um you know people fans and everything, but uh my youngest son, he's actually going to Michigan State University.
Mm.
And then for all things, my oldest son, his girlfriend is actually going to that other school, OSU. And I noticed when I watched some of the YouTube channels in Japan, there's a few OSU individuals over there. So
Mm.
hopefully, whenever I get the opportunity or I'm in Japan, I always try to represent the University of
Sure.
Michigan when I can. So, but do you support MSU? You know, do you wear MSU paraphernalia or not
No,
really? Or
very interesting. I travel a lot. I was in Las Vegas and I
mm,
was just wearing a simple T-shirt, and I
yeah.
saw another guy and he said, "Go green," and I instinctively answered, "Go white."
There you go. So it's ingrained.
And
It's
then
still
that was it. And then like he went his way, I went my way, and it's just a nice memory. But I don't really, I'm from Utah, so I went to University of Utah for undergrad, and that's
Mhm.
kind of where my roots are.
Okay.
You might see me wearing more red than than anything. But no, honestly, it was more a vehicle to get me into the career of law
Hmm.
than anything. It wasn't like, oh, I have to be a Spartan, I got to be a Wolverine. It was more like, you know, this the vehicle.
Well, that's good. That's good. So I think we have a few people. We're going to get started. Again, my name is Anthony Ray. Welcome to the Ray Law International channel. Our guest today is Tracy Greenwood. I'm going to do a brief introduction. Of course, Tracy has a long history, very accomplished professional. Um, just real quickly, Tracy is a seasoned attorney, technology consultant with over 15 years of experience spanning law, legal tech, business development, and cross-border consulting. Tracy is based in Tokyo, Japan. He currently serves um, as an you're right now. I think you got a new job. We're not going
Mhm.
to get into the new position and everything. I think it deals with recruitment and everything. I'll save that. I know you have your own channel, which we'll talk about or at least promote as well. But he's practiced law for many years. But in Japan, he's done many fascinating um, jobs, and his current work is, I believe, dealing with recruitment in Japan, and he's just a wealth of knowledge, just a perfect person to know and be a part of. So feel free to check out Tracy's YouTube channel, which is Weekly Fascination, and you'll get to know him a lot more, his background, and what he's really passionate about. So, Tracy, did you want to add anything a little bit about yourself before we jump into some of the prepared questions that we have?
Thank you for the nice introduction, Anthony. Always good to see you. Last time we met, we were in Shinjuku having a barbecue together.
Yeah, I saw in one of your videos you have this special yakitori restaurant that you love to go to. So next time I'm in
Yep.
town, we'll definitely have to go there as well. So,
Yeah. So, but I've been in Japan a total of over 20 years and speak fluent Japanese. I use it in my job. And a lot of that has been internal investigations, working with um, not directly with the DOJ and FBI, but kind of the work that they do kind of filters down to me.
mhm,
So, worked on a lot of antitrust, some FCPA, some second requests on major mergers and acquisitions, things like that. So, yeah.
excellent. So today, and really, as you know, we're an immigration law firm here at Ray Law International. We represent clients nationally and internationally. One of our connections is we are both attorneys. We both speak Japanese well. And I wanted to have you on. I have a few questions that are going to tie both your experience, um, more of a comparative or but not comparative law, but comparative law experience
Mhm.
as it deals with immigration. So our questions as we go through will kind of branch back and forth between U.S. immigration law experiences and Japanese immigration law experiences. And I think that's sort of, it'll be a little bit unique for our listeners as we do something a little bit different. So to get started, Tracy, can you share about how immigration, whether US or Japanese, has played a role in your personal or professional story?
Yes. So, coming back in 2014, I was hired by a recruiter who got me to work at a technology company here in Tokyo. I was managing three people, and
Mhm.
uh, I got what was called a management visa or professional visa. And then the process was very streamlined. We had a person, so in Japan, there are different kinds of lawyers.
Mhm.
So in the US, you have like a lawyer and paralegal. Japan, they have a lawyer, a judicial lawyer, and a administrative lawyer.
Yes.
You have an administrative lawyer who handles, when you think of administration, you think about any bureaucratic process you have to do.
Mhm.
Um, so they would handle immigration. And so my company hired an immigration attorney to handle that. Now, of course, all the onus is on me to collect the paperwork, get a background check,
Yes.
and had to get a driving record, had to get a criminal background check, had to get a complete work history. And they're very thorough, very thorough. And so there was a lot of back and forth. And I think the one thing that I remember the most is I have a clean history. I had to do the FBI background check for the bar, had
Mhm.
to do that, had to do, testing for jobs in America. Uh, and so I knew I had a clean record, and I
Yeah.
knew that my work history and my addresses, my residences were all in line.
Yes.
Pretty simple, but there's still a little bit of anxiety,
Mm.
and that's when the immigration attorney comes in and says, "Okay, look, I got this. It's going to be okay." Yeah.
So you had a really good experience with an immigration attorney. I know often people say, well, I can do it myself, or I don't want to pay an immigration attorney, and maybe your company paid for that. But would you say that you had a better experience with a professional, or do you think you still could have done it on your own, being an accomplished professional as yourself?
Well, after getting married here in Japan, after I
Hmm.
came, just a couple years after I moved to Japan, got married to a Japanese person, and so I'm now eligible for a spousal visa,
Hmm.
and that I did all by myself.
Okay.
Yeah, and that was very simple. Had to get proof of work, proof of address, and all that. But yeah,
How
I
many
did it myself.
how many trips did you make to the immigration office?
Just two,
Oh, good.
actually.
Okay.
It's very streamlined. It's interesting when you think of bureaucracy, right? It doesn't really have a nice ring to it,
Hmm.
but Japan has kind of perfected the bureaucracy.
Hmm.
If if that makes sense. But they're very streamlined. It's very efficient. It's pretty clear.
Okay.
What um, years ago you would have to go to the immigration office, get a checklist of all the documentation you need.
Yes.
Days you can go online and it's just right there. You go through the
Hmm.
checklist, get all the paperwork, all the documentation together, go in one time, and
Hmm.
it's a very busy office, but uh, go into the office, submit your paperwork, and then they have you write a postcard and
Hmm.
they have you put your address on it. And
Yes.
when you get that back in the mail, you know that your visa's been approved.
Okay.
And you take that postcard in with your passport, and then they approve your visa.
Okay. And so it sounds like you had a very positive experience with immigration in Japan, both professionally and, you know, on the personal side.
Yeah.
I know on my experience, obviously, professionally, I do it every day. I'm passionate about what I do. So I look at US immigration as a challenge.
Mm,
And oftentimes people feel, oh, we just fill out forms and I'll get what I expect. And unfortunately, US immigration has not always been that way.
mm,
Some people are very successful, but many people, because of language or not being clear on the government websites of what's required. I remember one time I had an engineer try to do it on his own, and he tried to go through the government website. He's like, I'm through. This makes no sense. I'm just going to give it to you. I've got other things to do. But on a personal side,
mm.
I actually did my wife's fiance visa.
Oh, wow.
And I did that during law school.
Mm,
So I did a test run before I actually started practicing. And we had a good experience. Everything went smoothly, but oftentimes I don't know about your experience in law school. You're energetic and all the details and you have the time.
yeah.
You're not usually, I mean, there were some, law school students who were also working and um, studying law. But for me, I was just 100% focused on classes. So I had the extra time to really deal with reading through everything and checking everything and making sure everything is well. So, that was many years ago. And now I get to do that for a lot of other people. So that's sort of my professional and personal experience with immigration. On the Japanese side, I haven't really had to deal with Japanese immigration to this point,
Mm,
but I have always made it a point to expand my network
mm,
in Japan. So I have made contact with several Japanese attorneys.
mm,
So should that ever be a need, I'll
mm,
absolutely have the opportunity. So
mm.
let's jump to our next question for that we have. So, Tracy, have you encountered any surprising challenges or unexpected opportunities related to immigration law in your work or personally?
Yes. So, trying to work in Japan, a lot of people come here, try to get a job. Actually,
Hmm.
job hunting is not allowed if you're on a tourist visa
Mm,
because
really?
that's considered it's part of work. So,
Mm,
um, even when I worked in a technology company, we had experts come from Australia or Hong Kong. They would
mhm.
have to get permission from immigration saying, I'm going to be at this exact place. This is my hotel. This is the company I'm representing when I'm there. And I'll be
Yes,
here this many days. They had to be very thorough about that.
really.
And
I know China does that for some of the visas that I've done for clients, but go ahead.
and so I was put in charge of doing that since I could speak to the English speakers in Australia and Hong Kong and other places. And so that that was very rewarding because once again, there's that anxiety sometimes, even though I have a job, I have a return ticket, and I know I have my hotel reserved. I know where I'll be visiting and who I'll be speaking to, and who's
Yeah,
responsible for me in country.
yeah.
There's still that anxiety of that weight, you know. And so I was able to take that experience when I got my visa. Say, don't
Mm,
worry,
mhm.
I got this, and it
Okay.
always, you know, and yeah, always came through, and just having somebody tell you it's going to be okay is
Mhm.
huge,
Oh,
huge,
absolutely. Especially going to a culture that the language is completely different. Way of
totally.
think way of thinking is different, and yeah, there's a lot of anxiety that people. Um, One of the questions you had mentioned, which sparked a response that I wanted to go back to. You said in Japan, when they come as a visitor, they can't look for a job.
Mhm.
And it's interesting in the US, our visitor's visa, sort of the B1, B2, is just the opposite. You
Mm,
can job search, you can do that. You can't work, but they don't see looking for a job as work.
okay.
So that's a unique difference on the US side when it comes to sort of the visitor's visa or the visa waiver program under ESTA, which people often call it.
And by the way, somebody should fact check me on that. Make sure. So
Yeah.
yeah.
Oh, I was going to also mention we do have people in the audience. If you do have questions for either Tracy or myself, please feel free to put it in the chat. We'll be looking at that. But, you know, the floor is open, and if you guys have comments, please share with those. All right, the next one I wanted to touch on, we had prepared is, are there moments that stand out where immigration policy directly affected a decision you had to make personally or professionally?
Mm, that's interesting. Yes. So the first visa I had, the management visa,
Hmm.
that allows you to work for your sponsor only.
Hmm.
So a lot of times attorneys, we have, somebody comes to you and says, review this project for me. Can you review this contract or something? I always had to say no. And I always put that in writing because I'm an attorney.
Yep.
And so while I was at the company,
Yeah.
I could only do work for them. Now the
Mm,
difference is now that I have a spousal visa, that's kind of like a golden ticket, right? So
yeah.
um, and it also depends on my employer. So if I have a full-time job and they say you can't have any outside work, I
Hmm.
understand. But I confirmed with my employer before I started that I'm able to do outside work, such as YouTube, because I do make some pocket change off of YouTube, and other things like that, little promotions I can do on the channel, etc. But
Mm,
and then every once in a while, somebody asks me, "Can you review this building lease for me? Can you review this contract for me?"
yeah.
And so that allows me to do that other work while being employed full time.
Now, do you
I'm sorry, can you repeat that?
sorry about that. So when you review the leases or building contracts, do you review that? Is that sort of property or contracts based in Japan or in the US?
That's in Japan.
Oh, really? Okay.
So my caveat is always
Yeah.
I can help you interpret this. I can show you some red flags, some orange flags,
Yeah.
but I can't give you legal advice.
Perfect. Yep.
So mainly what they're looking for is, what's the cancellation policy, or what's, can we renovate? If we
Mm-hmm.
renovate, do we have to return it to the original form when we move out?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Things like that. And interesting thing about Japanese property law, and probably more the business culture, is that um, a lot of the building management companies have a related company that does renovations after somebody leaves.
Yeah.
And so uh, a lot of times, I can't say 100% of the time, but sometimes they overcharge and
Okay.
say, okay, there was a tack in the wall. We're just going to replace the wallpaper throughout the entire house.
Okay.
That can happen. So I'm able to bring that up as somebody who's rented in Japan, and read through the policies and the move out and all that, and say, okay, here's something to look for. But I always have to say, can't give you legal advice. There is an add-on.
Mhm.
It's called the Gai Kokujima Bengoshi, which
Yes.
basically means foreign licensed attorney. If you have experience in your home jurisdiction,
Hmm.
and then you come to Japan and apply through I think it's the Ministry of Justice, you can
Yes.
get that permission to practice your home jurisdiction law in Japan.
Exactly. Yep. And that's an interesting topic. As you know, we do immigration, which is federal. And usually, because I'm licensed here in Michigan, a lot of times you're limited to Michigan, but we do federal law. So
Mhm.
it's an interesting aspect because in the US, it's very unique because we're limited to a state,
Mm,
whereas in other countries, it's more expansive throughout the whole country.
mm,
I think for me, for challenges,
mm,
um, obviously I do this professionally, so there's challenges every day.
mhm,
And since the beginning of the year, it's been exciting. It's been an exciting journey. Every week we have something new to inform our clients about or to overcome.
mhm,
And so I would like to say it's exciting. It's devastating and stressful for our clients,
mhm,
but this is part of life. There's a cycle, whether it's a recession, whether it's the change in administration and the new rules. That's why you have professionals come along and we guide you over that roller coaster, as you were mentioning before, as you're
yes,
helping people as well.
mhm,
That was one of the real reasons that I got into law. I just had a passion for helping people, and becoming a lawyer is an awesome way to really help as many people. I use the example, I can walk into jail, talk to a client, help them, and actually walk out.
yeah,
And and until you've had that experience, like
mm,
with criminal law,
mhm,
you really appreciate your freedom,
yes,
and you also appreciate your license and what you've been granted, because not everyone can walk into jail
mhm,
and walk out freely like that.
mhm,
So those are some unique experience, at least in the US, us attorneys can
mhm,
experience. So personally, as far as immigration challenges, it's been pretty smooth.
yeah,
Personally, as I mentioned, I really don't have any immigration challenges going to Japan. When I was there for some time, no questions. I think I had more questions going to Costa Rica for a couple weeks than I did in Japan.
yeah,
It also helps when you speak to the officer in Japanese and they're like,
sure,
"Oh, okay, yeah, go ahead."
yeah,
Um, but more so when I was going to Costa Rica for a couple weeks to learn, study Spanish, they were like, "Oh, you're studying Spanish, you're a lawyer."
mhm,
Okay. They kind of looked at me and they let me in, but there was sort of that look.
yeah,
So maybe if my Spanish was a little better, they would have just
mm,
said, "Go ahead, you're
right.
good." So do you want to say something?
Go
Okay.
right.
My next question we had for you is, are there any US or Japanese immigration policies you found especially confusing, frustrating, or impactful?
Mm. Yeah, so I think the most frustrating thing was since I'm a very curious person, and
Mm,
I have difficulty saying no when somebody comes to me for help,
mm,
especially if they don't speak Japanese and they have a problem, they have a landlord dispute or something. I just want to help.
yeah.
And like you, that's
Hmm.
why I got into law.
Hmm.
You know, and I saw my father had a construction company. He had a problem he could not solve. He
Mm,
hired an attorney who came in and said it's going to be okay, and it was okay. It didn't turn out exactly like he wanted, but it was still okay. So to see that what that license brings to the table and that
mm,
experience was such a powerful impact on me as a child.
mm, mhm.
Yeah, that's why I became a lawyer. So um, it was frustrating for me to tell people I can't help you with this because I have one job that I have to do and I can't do any outside work. That was frustrating, and that was determined by immigration. Not allowed to take outside work
Yep.
uh, other than the company that sponsors your visa. Now, with a spousal visa, I have a lot more latitude to take on projects, and I've done things for people, and they say, can I pay you next year or something? Sometimes I just say, look, I'll just do it as a friend.
Yeah.
You know, yeah, and that's really nice too. It
Hmm.
it's I don't even document it as pro bono,
Yeah.
you know, but it's just something I love to do because I know I can help. Right?
It's a good feeling. And I think that's one thing. attorneys really don't highlight all the time is, hey, this is the impact, positive impact we're having on people's lives. And, I think if we highlight those things, people kind of look, at least on the US side, look at attorneys a little bit more favorably. Not
Right.
always.
But
Um,
a story like that's not gonna get clicks. That made
um,
a big deal.
One of the things professionally for me that I faced in immigration, which I find frustrating.
Mm,
This is what I find very frustrating. I have this battle, Tracy. It's me, my word against Google. I don't know
mhm,
if you have that problem, but often Google said, or, I read on Reddit or whatnot, and it's frustrating because they come to me and they're already in trouble.
mhm,
Or foreign nationals in the US, they don't feel it's that important. And by the time they get to me, their options are extremely limited. And
mm,
all too often, you know, what I found amongst immigration attorneys, not all attorneys, but, you know, a lot of them will not just be direct and tell them, hey, you're in a bad situation and there's nothing I can do, or you have no choice, or there's no future, you're sort of trapped
mhm,
unless XYZ happens. And as you may know or may have heard of, probably happens in Japan as well. The golden ticket is just marry someone from that country and get the spousal visa or the green card here in the US. And often the response I get from people is, that's not that easy. You know how hard it is. Or I just got out of an abusive relationship, or I just got a divorce. I'm not even thinking about, getting back into another relationship with individuals. But what I find very frustrating is often just people not coming to an immigration professional early enough
mhm,
and planning ahead and seeing what their options are. And I
mhm,
think that whether it's a free 30-minute consultation or whether it's a $200 or $300 consultation, that small investment can definitely save them time, money, stress, and everything else
mhm,
further down along their immigration journey.
mhm,
And, weekly, as I do intake and consultations, unfortunately, I see that on a daily basis.
mhm,
Heart goes out to them. It's a little frustrating. So if I can shout out to anybody listening or anyone who watches this video later, whatever you're getting into, use a professional, get assistance, whether that's immigration or estate planning or taxes or whatever. They're there for a reason, and it may cost a little money, but
mhm,
Google, the internet has a specific situation tailored to whatever is out there. It may or may not fit your situation. And especially here in the US, immigration law is changing pretty much every week. So
mhm.
you really can't go off what happened to someone a year ago. So,
Exactly, and, I find to kinda dovetail off that, um, I've worked on the board of companies that, where the founder's a very, very bright person and puts together the founding documents, maybe incorporates in Delaware or something, and then you
yeah.
go through and you find out that half the jurisdiction is in Delaware and half of it is in British Columbia. It's like, where did you get this document? And you could have just paid somebody $500 and got it written professionally and checked. But
Mhm.
now you're in court and your choice of law is British Columbia. And how did we get here? So um, and it's the same thing with, you start an exercise program. You talk to a doctor before you go out and start lifting weights, especially if you're in your 50s like me, right? So, and
I'm there with you. Don't worry.
I think, and I just think this comes with age and experience, and sometimes experience is making mistakes. That I would say before starting anything that's going to have an impact,
Yes.
talk to a professional. I mean, maybe somebody told you if you buy this investment property, you'll save on your taxes. Well, talk to a tax professional before you do that. You do that with your 401k, right? You talk to a professional. Mm. There are very, very few things where you can save money by just winging it.
And since we only have one shot in life, I've learned why waste time.
Mhm,
Um, you know, and I use the example, I'm not a handyman. My father tried to get me to fix stuff, and I just was not. I wanted to go to law school. I wanted to sit in an office and
Yeah.
not be swinging a hammer. But yeah, I have a home project now where I got to work on the dishwasher, and I'm thinking, okay, this is going to take me 2 or 3 hours, or do I spend a lot of money and have a professional come in and get it done in a
Mm,
half hour?
yeah.
So those are sort of the choices I get to make as I go throughout life of, you know,
Mhm.
when to engage a professional or when not. But
Oh,
pretty much
sorry.
when you have to choose the right one too. Go ahead.
Yeah, true, true. Um, one thing I did remember that was frustrating is that the tourist visa for Japan, if you don't read it carefully, you can get tripped up. So it says, I believe, 90 days or 3 months.
Hmm.
The tourist visa is good for 90 days. I stayed for 3 months
Yeah,
on a tourist visa when I came over here one time.
yeah.
Now, some months are longer than 30 days. I ended up staying 91 days.
Did they raise some? Did it come up in the future or no?
It sure did. So I was here as a tourist before I got my job.
Yeah.
Went back, was on my way back to the US,
Hmm.
and the the officer at the desk looked at my passport as I was leaving and said, "Oh, you've overstayed your visa, your tourist visa." So, but isn't it 3 months? He said, "No, it's 90 days. You've been here 91." I was like, "Oh no." So they take me into an office. I paid something like $100 fine,
Really?
and then they stamped my passport and said, "Okay, get on your flight and get out of here." So
S- Tracy,
it's,
that is such a. I mean, I'm sorry it happened to you, but that's a lot better experience than what we have here in the U.S.
well, and what I did was that it wasn't really necessarily a fine. It was more a fine on stupidity. Let's put it that way, and me just not checking carefully. But I was having too much fun in Japan. The food was too good. I was just having too much fun. But um, and I just assumed 3 months. Technically, it
Mm.
does say 90 days, so I was wrong. So it wasn't necessarily a fine. It was a visa extension.
Oh, okay.
So they stamped my passport for 10 days, and I said, "Does that mean I can go back to Tokyo for 10 more days?" They said, "No, just get out of here." They're very nice. They knew it was an honest mistake. It wasn't like I overstayed by 10 years or something, you know. So
I hope that our U.S. CBP officers at the border will hear this video and incorporate some of that humanity
yeah,
into what they do because, we're all human. Like you mentioned, we make mistakes.
yeah,
And even though I know in law, in the U.S. law, mistake is a defense. Unfortunately, in U.S. immigration law and other areas, it's not always granted or looked upon as a defense as we learn in law school. Because I'm
yeah.
like, hey, mistake.
You can't really say, "Officer, I thought the speed limit was 65 here." When you're in a
Yep.
red neighborhood, you can't just say, "I made a mistake," because you know
Yeah.
the law's the law. So that was my mistake, and I paid for it, but I never made it again.
Well, good to remember. I'll remember that.
I
90 days.
told on myself.
So our next question, we're going to jump to our next one. We got a couple more. If you could change one thing about the U.S. or Japanese immigration process, what would it be?
Streamline it. Streamline it.
Also,
Keep it like you were saying earlier. It can change from week to week, right? And
hmm
and it's not really clear to me, even as an American and as an attorney, it's not really
hmm
clear to me who's making the decisions, right?
mm
So who's
hmm
the ultimate authority, um, and what's the policy? Just streamline it. Make it just make it simple, you know,
hmm
make it streamlined, and then don't change it. And now, if we find out later, like let's say we have like the engineering visa or something, and um, cloud services are taking off, and we're building data centers all over the place, and
Yeah.
um, okay, then we maybe we need some more engineers so we can actually change that. But just make it consistent, make it clear. And
Now, is this more on the US side, Japan side, or both?
I would say the US. Japan, it
Okay.
doesn't change that much.
Mm-hmm.
And it's very interesting that you're not there's maybe there's a website out there, but it's not really clear what kind of visa you can get. So if you're a student and you
Mm,
go as a student, which allows you to work 20 hours a week,
yeah.
if you're a university college student, um, what kind of visa can I get? Sometimes it's very difficult to, kind of get an upgrade. So if you're here as a student, you meet somebody and you decide to get married, can I change my student visa into a spousal visa?
Hmm.
And the process, switching over to the Japan side here, the process from getting a 1 year visa to a 5 year visa to getting permanent residency, which would be more like a green card, is
Yeah.
not really clear.
Okay.
And it seems, and this is just anecdotal, it seems as if the officer at the desk has a little discretion.
Hmm.
So
Yeah.
one thing that can happen, and this is just anecdotal, is that when you go in and ask for a permanent resident visa application,
Yeah.
if they give you the application after reviewing your files,
Yeah.
you're almost guaranteed to get it.
Hmm.
And then statistically, they can say, well, we don't deny anybody a permanent resident visa. See how nice we are? And this is just me being a little cynical. Okay.
Yeah.
Um, the process from getting like a 1 year work visa or spousal visa to a permanent residency is not really clear. There's no clear pathway.
Sure.
Yeah.
There's many options, and everyone has a little different experience. I've heard. So
Mhm.
I've heard.
Yeah, this is
Never.
like anecdotal. So I've
Yeah.
never really had an immigration officer say, "Well, here's what we really do." It's more like, you know,
It's you mentioned that on the U.S. side for immigration. Obviously, I would say what is really needed is more clarity and humanity, and sort of respect. I
mm,
always say, or always feel that, if you have a gun, that's great. You have control and power, but you have to learn how to use that when necessary. You don't need to use it inappropriately. And all too often, just everyday individuals are harassed
mm,
for no particular reason,
mm,
or officers at the port of entry.
mm.
Some of them are not educated in the immigration law and provide incorrect information. So
Yeah.
we'll have clients like, we'll give them the legal advice, we'll even document it, and
Mhm.
they'll go to the port of entry and they'll tell them something else, and they'll say, "You were wrong. They said you were wrong," and I'm like, but then they let them in anyways. I'm like, oh. So oftentimes it's education. I think so. Education at the port of entry
Mhm,
is also vital on the U.S. side.
mhm,
Um, I've heard several things on the Japanese side.
mhm,
I haven't experienced it,
mhm,
so but I definitely personally would always have a professional walkthrough because I really don't want to go to the government office
yeah,
that often and deal with it. Even though I know, I speak the language and I probably could do it myself, I
mhm,
have that mentality where, you know, I could spend an hour, 2 hours dealing with this, or I can do an hour, 2 hours and make X number of dollars. What am I going to do?
yeah.
So,
And
you know,
that's exactly why I had an immigration attorney uh, renew my visa for me recently,
hmm.
your visa. And I asked a friend, and he said, "Okay, this is the person who helped me, and
Yep.
it's $500." But I filled out all the paperwork.
Hmm.
He took it to the office. He waited in line, and it can be a half a day. I mean, you basically take a day off when
Hmm.
you do immigration, because if you get there in the morning, there's a huge line,
Yeah.
and just hope that you get to the window by noon,
Hmm.
because then there's a 1 hour lunch break because it's a government office, right? And then you come back at 1, and you could be there till 5 o'clock. So, you know, and then they close at 5 o'clock, and that's it for the day. We're done. So that's why I paid a professional. And
Hmm.
in my case, it was $500 just to go process it, to go hand it in. And what he does, he goes in there. He's a former immigration officer. He
Yep.
goes in. I don't know if there's a specific window for immigration attorneys,
Yeah.
but he'll go in there with a stack of files. And
Hmm.
when they see him, they actually breathe a sigh of relief because he speaks
Oh,
Japanese and they know that all the ducks are in order.
yeah,
Those 10 visas he's applying for today, they know it's going to be done correctly.
exactly.
A
Hmm.
lot of people like me, even though speaking Japanese and being an attorney myself, I can still get something wrong.
Yep. Hmm.
So they can take you to the window and then a half hour later they call you back like, oh, is this the correct address? You know, one thing people run into, and a friend of mine did a YouTube video about this.
Hmm.
Your name on your passport, Americans, most of us have middle names.
Middle name. Yep.
Right? Japanese don't have middle names.
Hmm.
So if your American passport has like, um, what's a good name? William Jefferson Clinton,
Yeah.
right? Um, well, Jefferson is pretty long, especially when you put it into Japanese in the katakana alphabet, right?
Yeah.
But the official forms in Japan, since Japanese names are shorter, they'll
Hmm.
have spaces. But if your passport says William Jefferson Clinton,
Hmm.
right, then you have to write all that out. There's not enough space to write it. And then when you go to rent an apartment or pay the water bill, pay the internet, that bill has to have the same name that's on your residence card, which is the same name on your passport, which is the same name on your birth certificate, right? So that can create difficulties. Some people get a bank card that just has their first and last name,
Hmm.
right? Because that's all that the bank card allows.
Yeah.
And they go to get a loan for a home or something. They say, "Oh, your documentation's wrong. This says, you know, Tracy Johnson Greenwood, and
Mhm.
this paper says Tracy J Greenwood. We don't think we can give you a loan."
Do you see, obviously, you've been in Japan for 20 some years, and we all know that's an issue.
Hmm.
Have you seen any, and I've heard there's many things that have changed that are more progressive, open to foreign nationals living and residing in Japan, but specifically for this aspect of the whole name, middle name, especially us Americans, yes, we're causing all the problems. Have you seen any movement towards um, accommodating or making changes or just, obviously to me it's a IT system thing, throw in a middle name and this
Hmm.
problem solved. But have you seen any movement from the administrative side over the past 20 years?
Yes, what's been really nice is, so Japanese is a very, very difficult language, and as you know, and in Japanese, the word for name is namae,
Yes.
but on a form, it's shime, right?
Hmm.
So a lot of people get confused because they've learned in their first year Japanese class, onamae wa nan desu ka? What's your name? They go to
Yes.
fill out a form and it says shime. They're like, what does that mean? Right?
Hmm.
So
Yeah.
they're actually teaching people in government offices and police and immigration. They're teaching them to speak simpler Japanese.
Ah, okay.
If you and I start talking about the federal rules of civil procedure, and a
Mhm.
non-attorney is sitting there, or maybe somebody whose English is their second language, they're
Yeah,
going to be lost, right?
exactly.
If I say, okay, we're doing a deposition today, and this is based on the federal rules of civil procedure, and this is under Rule 1B, and the person who is just learning English would look at us like, you two are aliens, right? So the of course Japanese also, it's interesting because speech patterns can be very vague.
Hmm.
People don't necessarily say no. They don't necessarily say no.
Hmm.
The word difficult is one way to say no, right?
No.
Oh, that's going to be very difficult. An American says, well, then let's try harder. A Japanese person says, no, it's difficult, which means it's not going to happen.
No.
Right?
Yeah. Done. No. It's over.
However, on official forms, language is extremely precise, right?
Hmm.
And
Yeah.
so um, that's why the officials at the immigration office, or any agency you go to visit, they use very, very difficult words that are not in your Japanese conversation textbook. And what they're teaching people is how to speak simpler
Mm.
to somebody where Japanese is their second language.
That's unique because, as you know, Japanese culture, you step into more of the employment side, you're using a different type of Japanese, and then they've got to see, okay, someone who doesn't speak Japanese as their first language, and I've got to switch. So, from their standpoint, it's got to be challenging.
And
Um,
let's
I know for me when I've never had the privilege of working in a Japanese company and dealing with the various honorific and special business Japanese that's required. But I guess from the reverse side, in front of all your peers, you've got to switch and use a different level
yeah.
or a different type of Japanese. I guess that's unique. It's going to be hard.
Well, I guess it would be like if I were at a nice cafe in London and I wanted to get a cup of coffee, I would say, "May I please have a cup of coffee?" If you're at a
Mm,
friend's house, say, "Hey, dude, give me a cup of Joe." Right?
yeah.
But Japanese is like that too. Now, theirs is actually written down and structured, but ours is more like, when you're with a friend, you talk like this. When you're at work, you talk like this. When you're at a fancy restaurant, you speak like this. Um, so ours is more, we can kind of go back and forth, whereas Japanese is, it's very structured.
Hmm. Yeah.
And so, and it's not like, I was just watching Star Trek, and Captain Picard is talking to an alien race, and then they say, if you make the slightest error, you will start a war, you'll offend them. I've heard
Yes.
stories like that about Japan. I don't think that's true, because I've made
Mhm.
mistakes, and what they might be thinking is, oh, his Japanese just isn't that good. You know, they're very understanding. So
No, I've had a very positive experience over the past 25 years speaking Japanese in Japan on
mm,
a professional level,
yeah,
speaking with clients and attorneys, and it's it's been a very positive. Again, I have not worked in a Japanese law firm or company, so that's a very different thing. But as far as doing business and working with them using Japanese is very accommodating.
yeah.
So before we go to our last question, I wanted to just put a shout out to, I believe it's Jeong from, I believe, Korea, right? Um, just thank you so much for listening in and providing the comments. If there's any questions you have for um, Tracy or myself, feel free to put that in the chat. Our live stream is really talking about how immigration, I guess I should have called it cross-cultural,
Mm,
cross-national immigration experience that Tracy and I have had, and what we have experienced, but also from my standpoint, also what my clients have experienced. So going to the last question, um, that I wanted to touch on. Are there any questions you always have had about how U.S. immigration works, or you never really got a good answer?
Hmm, that's a good question. I okay, so years ago, since I speak English, a friend asked me to help with a green card. Was married to a Japanese spouse, and so I was
Mhm.
in Tokyo at the time.
Yeah,
And a friend said, like, I'm going to the immigration office, or actually, sorry, going to the U.S. embassy to apply for a green card for my Japanese spouse. Can you come with me? And I went to help, and I helped them fill out the paperwork, and
yeah.
um, actually saw a famous Japanese actress in there who was also interviewing for her entertainment visa. It
Oh,
was Yuki Kudo. She was in a movie called Snow Falling on Cedars, which
mm,
is way back in the 90s, I think. But I saw her there,
yeah.
and that was very interesting. Um, but I think the process for the green card seemed to be subjective, and
Mm,
there are people around us. So there's a lot of U.S. military in Japan, and
yes.
a lot of spouses, a lot of international marriages. And so it's not just an American and Japanese, it's an American and Filipina, or, somebody from Germany or whatever.
Mm,
Um, and so a lot of people had immigration questions. There always seemed to be somebody on the base who was kind of like the go-to person. who was not an
Okay.
attorney. It was like the Google of the time,
Yes.
and they
Mhm.
kind of had this. They had maybe gone through a green card application, so they would tell everybody, okay, here's what you do, and but you're not talking to a professional, so it's like
Yeah.
going to you Dr. Google or something for health
Mhm.
advice. So they weren't always given exact story or the updated story, right? So
Mhm.
um, the process for getting the green card was not always clear, and this is mostly based on marriage to a U.S. citizen.
Mhm.
That was
Yes.
never 100% clear, and I'm sure it's written somewhere. Like, how long do you have to be married? And then a lot of people I work with a lot of foreigners here in Japan who have green cards in the U.S.
Yes.
and they say, I need to go back to America or I will lose my green card.
Yeah.
And so that seems to be so the biggest question for me is green cards, what's necessary and how to keep it. Because if you live in the US for a long time, you have a green card, and then you move to another country, what happens? Do you have to go back and work? Do you have to go back for a visit? Or
I think in what you kind of mentioned, there was two things. What I hear is one, is there a clear, certain path that the government provides for getting the green card through the green card process? And secondly, if I have a green card, I'm living in Japan or abroad for a long extended period of times, is going back to Japan going back to the US once a year, a
Mhm.
solution to the problem? I often hear back. And your story, I'm assuming since you went with them, probably happened quite some time ago,
Oh yes,
correct?
that was
Or is it?
in the 1990s. My
Exactly. Yes.
stint here in Japan, yeah.
And the reason why I highlight that is now the government, the US government, has banned attorneys and anyone else, non
Mhm.
essentials. Part of this is probably due to 9/11, but
Mm,
has essentially banned any attorneys from going in with their clients or having to help. So
mm,
if you don't have an appointment and you're not on that list or
mhm,
on that application, you are not going to the U.S. Embassy or consulate in Japan.
mhm,
But the first question is that's one of the challenges of U.S. immigration law is the ambiguity
mm,
and the fluidity of how much evidence do I need? What are the requirements? This website says this, but then you get a letter from the government called a request for evidence that has 5, 6 pages. Wait, what happened?
mhm,
And certain people, groups are treated differently.
mm,
Uh, Japanese clients are, for the most part, or foreign nationals are trusted more than, let's say, someone from Africa or certain parts of Europe. So we have that situation where first, what country are you from?
mm,
Have you traveled? And then what kind of evidence? So, you know, for the green card side,
mm,
what's required? We have documented, to the nth degree. And I think with the current government, that's just even more. Often people say, well, I've got, nowadays with our smartphones, we're just texting each other in video calls.
mm,
And, there's no letters you put in the mail and it takes a week or 2 weeks to get to the other country. We don't have those anymore. And some photos are usually with both people on their phones in the video chat instead of together physically. We can thank the pandemic for that, but and our phones. But overcoming having the evidence is crucial and critical. And I often
mm.
tell people our US immigration system is back in the 1950s.
Okay.
And the younger generation, they don't understand that. But
Mm,
for those older people, it's just you walk them through. We have to document. I'm telling clients, you got to go on a date night and take photos this
yeah.
weekend.
Mhm,
You can't, I don't like this.
mm,
Or I'm against wearing a wedding ring. Just put it on and go to the interview.
yep,
You can take it off and finish. So those are
mm,
some things on evidence.
mm,
As far as clarity, as far as clarity, I don't think our government is ever going to be very specific. I think they love ambiguity. It gives them the freedom to do whatever they like and deny cases And that's why you see the inconsistency. That's the challenge of US immigration, is you don't have the certainty that you would. A lot of our corporate clients, they want that certainty. Am I
Mm,
going to get the visa 100%?
mm,
Japanese, for the most part, on the corporate side, do not like risk. They don't
yes,
want that denial.
exactly.
And it's kind of frustrating and baffling for them to say, hey, I filed A through, you know, F,
Mm,
and it still didn't get approved. What went wrong?
mm,
Or, Mr. Suzuki just before me, same situation. He got his visa, e-visa. Why didn't I?
yep.
And these are things that are very challenging about the US immigration system,
Mm,
which, you know, you just have to understand the limits of US immigration and where they're at.
mm,
And I think we do not push it as much, maybe in other areas of law that you might, where you have a judge that you can get up in front and convince them and, sway them to your side, as opposed to immigration. There's this abstract person that you can't touch, and all your arguments are in writing. And I think that's crucial. One of the things I'll leave with with our group here is oftentimes when people apply for their visas in Japan and other countries, they use the form DS-160, which is the application for a non-immigrant visa. I
mm,
often tell people that, that's your chance to speak to that officer. You
mm,
can't just, officers, you can take 100, 200 pieces of paper. They're not going to look at that, or they've already made the decision before you even got to the embassy. And
mm,
when people understand that how you fill out that application, which they think is, oh, it's just about me, it's simple, you're making your argument in that application and convincing the officer to do that. And I think when people start looking at that and seeing that as a tool for advocacy or
mm,
to, you know, get their application approved, they'll start taking it, I think, a little bit more serious. And I think what we're going to see in the near future, or probably even now,
mm,
that one, we know visa, it's getting more expensive to come to the US.
mhm,
But, I always tell people you don't want the denial in the first place, because once you get the denial, the officer says, "Oh, you can just apply again." And I, I cringe when I hear that, because
mm.
they believe them. And
Oh boy.
I've had people apply 4 or 5 times for a visitor's visa expecting a different result. And
Mm,
they don't get it, but they believe the officer because they're in a government position, and culturally they think they're going to tell the truth.
mm,
And it's so frustrating. So those are some of the cultural aspects that we get to deal with um,
yep,
when people engage with the U.S. immigration systems.
mhm. What
Any, go ahead.
sorry, one key thing I was gonna bring up, which is quite different from the US, maybe changing recently, but, um, we talked about federal law before versus state law. In
Mhm.
Japan, everything's federal law.
Yes.
So if you get a license to practice law, you can go to any of the 47 prefectures and set up an
Mhm.
office. Um,
Mhm.
that, however, means that the police are all federal police. So
Mhm.
a cop who's walking the beat or a traffic cop can ask you for your papers.
Mhm.
And it's happened before. One time I was on a borrowed bicycle, and it
Yeah.
was obviously not my bicycle, but I had
Mhm.
permission from the bike shop because my bike was in the shop, but my bicycle was in the shop. And they looked it up. They said, "This doesn't belong to you." I said, "I can tell you who it belongs to. It's the
Mhm.
bicycle shop where my bicycle is."
Yeah.
It was a loaner,
Sure.
and
Yeah.
so in the meantime, while I'm there at the police box, we have little police boxes around the city, right?
Yeah.
And at the police box, I'm there, and he says, "Well, while you're here, I need to see your visa." And I thought,
Mhm.
"What?" He said, "Yeah, I just need to make sure you're here, you know,
Yeah.
legit."
Yeah.
And I was baffled. And then somebody explained to me that any police officer can ask you for your
Mhm.
immigration status in Japan.
Now, was this recently or many years ago?
This is in the 90s.
Okay. And were you dressed up in a suit
Um,
or just
He
casual?
was in jeans and a t-shirt.
Yeah.
Which
I I've been stopped only once in Japan when I was living there,
Mhm,
and that was when I was in my 20s, real young, and I was using a bike. They weren't really too concerned about registration in Osaka and the area I was in.
mhm.
But as soon as I spoke Japanese, they're like, "Oh yeah, you're good. Go ahead."
Good, yeah.
But I've heard other experiences, but um, from my experience, I've never been stopped in Tokyo at
Mhm,
all. Granted, I'm not usually out at 12 late at night or in certain areas. However, I've had a fairly well, I've never been at a police box or interacted other than that one experience when I was in my 20s. So
mhm,
it's interesting. I think also, how you present yourself, as many people have mentioned through various videos on the internet, is key because it's that first impression. Um, I'm still wearing a three-piece suit, and people are like, "Oh my God, what are you doing?" But especially in Japan or even in the U.S., um, it's a different impact, and not that it impacts people differently,
mhm.
and see they look at you differently, but
Sure.
not that you have to, but they profile people here in the U.S. all the time. So,
Well, I was just gonna say, uh, when I go to the gym, and if I'm in my sweats or I just got done with the gym, and my home is very close, so I just walk home and take a shower instead of shower at the gym, right? But less stuff to carry. So on my way back from the gym, I'm sweaty. I'm wearing dirty clothes. People will actually walk across the street to avoid me. The same street, if I walk, I've got my tie on, I'm going to a meeting, people just smile and walk by. So it really is that first impression.
one last story I'm going to just share with you, and then I think we'll wrap up. But it was funny this year when I was in Japan in March and April. Um, it was it was really interesting. Tokyo is a big city, but when I was in Osaka, sort of south of Osaka, I was hanging out waiting for some friends, and there was some gathering young people at the station, and it was noticeable because in this rural area, south of Osaka, it's just strange that you would have like 50 or 60 young people all gathered together at the
Mm,
train station expecting or waiting for something. And so I'm there with my camera taking photos, enjoying life. And of course, I don't look Japanese.
mhm.
Not Japanese. And this random lady comes up and just talks to me and asks me, "Wow, why are there so many kids here?" And she does this in Japanese. I'm thinking, yeah, no, I'm not Japanese. How do you assume I speak? So in Osaka, it's a good feeling. I think they're a little bit more relaxed that, hey, you're here. I'm just going to speak to you in Japanese. And that's good. So I hope that's a good trend
Yeah.
because, it really makes it a good feeling that, people anticipate you to be able to speak Japanese.
Mhm.
As often people say, in Japan, it's important that you speak Japanese. So it was good to get that. I was just a little surprised.
Nice.
Most people don't just engage, and there was no one else around us. So it was
Mhm.
just me. It's just like, oh, really? Okay. Yep. I don't know.
Yeah,
It was an easy response.
Tokyo's very different. People don't really talk to a random person you know, on the
Yeah.
street. Yeah. But 'cause, I mean, it's a big city. You see thousands of people every day. You can't
Mhm.
just talk to every person you see. So,
So, Tracy, we're going to wrap up. I want to just thank you for your time and sharing with our community and with everybody else about your experience in immigration, both in Japan and the US. And for all our listeners, I really hope that this has been helpful. Please, if it is, put that in the chat. Let us know. Maybe there's something we didn't cover. We can't cover everything. And, there's a lot of the topics that we really are not really focused on, which are interesting, excuse me, for Japan or even in the U.S. But feel free to reach out to us. Again, Tracy's YouTube channel is Weekly Fascination. Fascination or Fascinations?
weekly fascination. Yeah.
Yes. So check him out there. He's putting out content regularly, and it's very insightful. He is such a smart and off the chart guy. You just really want to connect and find out all the wealth that he knows in. 20 plus years in Japan, plus all the legal experience. He's very unique in Japan and has a very unique experience and perspective. Um, we'll continue to provide and have guests on like Tracy. Tracy, thank you so much. And you have a good rest of your week, okay?
All right. Thanks, Anthony. It's good to see you again.
Okay, great seeing you. Take care.
Be
Bye
back
now.
in touch. Okay. Cheers. Bye.
Cheers.